Hey, good to see you. Welcome back, fourth graders. You'll never guess who I just got off the phone with. It wasn't really the phone, it was like the computer thing, Zoom. Zoom? Yeah. Mrs. Eddie. No, I'm not kidding. Talked to her, the whole family. She's great. Missing school, missing you. We talked about the high adventures of the Lady Wilma, Praiseworthy, and Master Jack. Are you ready for some more? Chapter 3 of By the Great Horn Spoon by Sid Fleischman. Man, that was a good chapter last time. That whole pig thing, that was pretty clever of Praiseworthy. And how cool he seemed like he was trying to give Jack the whole credit for the idea. And they found the thief who turned out to be the quote-unquote judge. Now we know him as Cut-Eye Higgins. I suppose we'll find the balance of our money in your cabin, sir. Try to find it, spat the thief, peering from Jack to Praiseworthy back again. Clever you are, but we'll meet again, I warn you, or my name's not Cut-Eye Higgins. We'll meet again. Something tells me later on in this book, there's going to be a little bit more of Cut-Eye Higgins, The author seems to be telling us something's going to happen. What do we call that? Foreshadowing. Have you ever heard that word? Now, when authors, throw something in the book to make you think, something's going to happen later. Probably not going to be good. Foreshadowing. I don't know. Let's find out what happens. We're going to read Chapter 3, News of the Sea Raven. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a great story of high seas adventure. Chapter 3. The boy and the butler moved their carpet bags into a cabin with one porthole, 4 bunks, and 6 passengers. A hammock was strung up for Jack, since Mountain Jim preferred to sleep on the floor with his yellow bobcat cap for a pillow. There was room for all. Shucks, he smiled. If I was to sleep in a bed, I'd think I was sick. Among their cabin mates were Dr. Buckby, the horse doctor. He was going out to the mines on his wooden leg to locate a rich gold deposit. He had a map, he whispered, that marked the very spot. At the same time, he carried an alarm trumpet around his neck day and night in case anyone tried to take the map from him. In addition to Mountain Jim and Dr. Buckby, there was an ex-soldier named Nath Tweedy. He still wore his forage cap and hickory shirt and kept his rifle and bayonet propped on a corner of the cabin. Finally, there was Mr. Azariah Jones, a jolly Yankee trader who was as big as the cabin was small. As Jack was soon to discover, Mr. Azariah Jones could squeeze through the cabin door by holding his breath, or only by holding his breath. He said he weighed 300 pounds, barefoot and bald-headed. It amused Praiseworthy that the Yankee trader had unwittingly provided Jack and himself with their accommodations in the hold. The 18 barrels of potatoes belonged to Mr. Azariah Jones, who planned to sell them in San Francisco. When all of these passengers were in the cabin, at one and the same time, it seemed to Jack that the walls would burst. At night, the chorus of snoring and snorting was a seagoing grand opera. Jack learned to fall asleep with his fingers in his ears. When a good wind was blowing, the Lady Wilma spread her sails and saved fuel. Remember we were talking about this side-wheeler thing? Sometimes it's under the power of a steam engine, fueled by coal, and that turns the big paddle wheel on the side and makes the ship go forward. But sometimes when the wind is blowing, they hoist the sails and it turns into a regular sailboat. So it's kind of like a hybrid. It's 2 ships in one, a sailboat and a powerboat. When a good wind was blowing, the Lady Wilma spread her sails and saved fuel. Day by day, the sun grew more fiery. Soon there was hardly a breath of air left on shipboard. The canvas hung limp and dispirited from the yard arms. That means there's no wind. Tar oozed from between the deck planking and dripped from the rigging. But with her machinery clanking, the ship went thrashing on, digging her stout bows into the equator. Wherever Jack went, Good Luck, the pig, came trotting at his heels. Remember Good Luck? Good Luck the pig came trotting at his heels. When Jack stretched out under the stern boat to add a few words to his letter, the porker found him and nuzzled into the shade beside him. Jack refused to scratch his back, I told you yesterday, he said. He must be stern. You better stop following me. We've got to stop being friends, you and me. Sir, I've made up my mind. If pigs were so smart, they wouldn't eat so much. See how fat you're getting? Don't you know you're going to end up in the galley? That's the kitchen. Every time the cook sees you, he smacks his lips. Sunday dinner is what you are. Go away, sir. But the porker merely nudged Jack's elbow lovingly with his black snout. I told you, said Jack, I'm not going to scratch your back anymore. Let me be. There was no reasoning with the porker. He promptly fell asleep in the shade and gave Jack a heavy sigh. There was no escape for the pig. Next week or the week after, the cook would come looking for him with a meat cleaver. Jack put it out of his mind and let the porker sleep. For a moment, he watched the flying fish, startled by the crash of the paddle wheels, leap through the air like arrows shot from the sea. And then he wrote. Sounds like he's going to write another letter. I take pen in hand, dearest aunt and dearest sisters, to tell you of our adventures to date. But first I will say that you would hardly know me. These winter days, I am browned to a crisp, except for my nose. It sunburns something awful and keeps peeling. Captain Swain says that my nose looks like a molting chicken. We still have no sight of the Sea Raven, so I can't tell you how the race is coming. I certainly hope we win. Remember the Sea Raven, the other boat? The captain really wants to beat that ship all the way around to California. Praiseworthy wants me to be sure to remember him to you. I see I have already said that above. He just passed by. He walks around the deck 50 times every day. He carries his umbrella for shade. Hoping you will not worry, I will confess that we had a certain misfortune at the outside of our voyage, but all is well now. I have already mentioned the judge who rolls his own cigars. We took him for a gentleman, but that was an error in judgment. He is a desperate scoundrel whose name is Cut-Eye Higgins. Imagine. But he was no match for Praiseworthy. I can tell you now that Mr. Cut-Eye Higgins has stolen our money. We had to work off our passage at the coal bins. We never complained, not once. Praiseworthy says that if it weren't for me, we might never have trapped Mr. Cut-Eye Higgins, but it was really the other way around. Praiseworthy never takes credit for himself. All I did was take Good Luck, the pig, to the bunkers with me, where he got covered with coal dust. That put the idea in Praiseworthy's head. Someday when we sail back to Boston with our pockets full of gold nuggets, I'll tell you more and make you laugh. But you'll be glad to know that Mr. Cut-Eye Higgins spends his day at the fire below decks, while we have our rightful cabin. We thought we would never find the rest of our money, which the thief had hidden. Captain Swain helped us search the cabin, lighting up one of Mr. Cut-Eye Higgins' homemade cigars. We looked everywhere and wouldn't have found the money at all if Captain Swain had begun to choke on the cigar. There, rolled up inside, were our Boston banknotes. The guy he rolled up the stolen money inside his cigars. I will mail this letter at our first port of call, Rio de Janeiro. Imagine that. Your devoted runaways are seeing the world. I must stop now, as I just heard someone call, "Ship ahoy!" Maybe it's the Sea Raven. When Jack looked up, the captain was standing on the paddle box, squinting at the distant ship through his brass long glass like a telescope. "Blast!" he scowled. "She's not the Sea Raven, mates. She's a square rigger, becalmed, no doubt. There's not enough breeze in these latitudes to snuff out a candle." Becalmed means the sailboat can't move forward because there's no wind. So it's a square rigger. It doesn't have a side paddle, so it just relies on the wind to move. And it's becalmed, meaning it can't move. It was almost 2 hours before the two ships came within hailing distance. Praiseworthy finished his 50 laps around the deck, and Jack locked Good Luck in his pen. But 10 minutes later, the porker was at Jack's heels again. Captain Swain got out his silver speaking tube and shouted across the water. With all her sails hanging like some great curtains, the square rigger seemed to Jack like some giant of the sea. "Ahoy! Ahoy!" answered the master of the square rigger through his silver speaking tube. They must have like a tube that's flared at the end like a trumpet. And when you speak through it, it makes it louder. It amplifies their voice, makes it louder. "Aye, Captain. She came steaming by a day ago." Have you seen the Sea Raven, sir? Aye, Captain. She came steaming by a day ago. Captain Swain lowered the speaking tube from his lips long enough to say, Blast! The voice from the square rigger floated across again. Can you give us a tow, Captain? What's that? I've been becalmed for a week. We're 36 days out of New Orleans and bound for California. Fever has broken out below deck, sir. The Sea Raven turned her back on us and ran. I beg you, sir, give us a tow until we catch a wind to make port. Jack, standing on a capstan, could tell that the Captain Swain was about to order full speed ahead. But now he could be seen pacing back and forth on the paddle box, growling and grumbling to himself. Under the tropical sun, the brass buttons on his coats glowed like lumps of fire. Towing the square rigger would slow the Lady Wilma to a dogged crawl. Praiseworthy, too, under his black umbrella, watched the captain. Every gold seeker aboard seemed to be holding his breath, waiting for Captain Swain to make his decision. To come to the aid of the square rigger could well mean that the Lady Wilma might be put out of the race. She may never catch up to the Sea Raven. Captain Swain rubbed his plump nose. He cocked an eye at the sailing ship with her canvas hanging dead from the yards, and then he raised the speaking tube to his lips and shouted, Glad to help, sir. We'll throw you a hawser. Must be a rope. There came a wild shouting from the rails of the square rigger, where passengers and crews tossed hats in the air. Jack couldn't help being swept way up in their joy and relief, and he told himself that the Lady Wilma might get back in the race yet. If Captain Swain didn't think of something, Praiseworthy would. Within the hours, the side wheeler was in harness, like a sturdy ox, pulling her burden across the equator. So the Lady Wilma's going to tow this poor ship and help these people out. That's pretty cool of the captain. The great Southern Cross rose higher in the heavens. Remember, we're talking about star constellations, like the Big Dipper? Now they see the Southern Cross. That means you're way south on the earth, south of the equator. Jack's education proceeded without books. Praiseworthy borrowed Captain Swain's brass long glass at night, and the sky became their textbook. They examined strange constellations and star clouds. It was a glittering landscape never seen overhead in Boston. Praiseworthy, said Jack, was my father anything like you? I mean, nothing like me, Master Jack. They were silent for a moment. There were times when Jack felt a great emptiness, a loneliness that not even Aunt Arabella could dispel. Even if they should find no gold in California, he was glad to be traveling with Praiseworthy, to be sharing adventures and even misfortunes. Were you always a butler? He asked. Always. Jack brushed the hair out of his eyes. I mean, if you weren't a butler, you wouldn't have to call me Master Jack, as if we were at home. We're partners. You could call me Jack, just plain Jack. Oh, I couldn't do that. It wouldn't be proper. No, indeed. But I'd like it just fine. We mustn't forget my position, Master Jack. But if we strike it rich, you won't have to be a butler anymore. Oh, I shouldn't like to be anything but a butler. Not for a moment. I was born to my calling, like my father before me and his father before him. It will please me to go on serving your Aunt Arabella. Look there, Master Jack. I believe that is the constellation of the Whale. A fine sight, isn't it? The two gold ships, linked together like sausages, went lumbering through the sea. On the fifth day, a puff of wind began to tug at the square rigger's jibs, that's her sails. And then, one after another, the topsails, the royals, and the mainsails swelled out like great white clouds. By grabs, she's caught a wind! By grabs, she's caught a wind! Roared Captain Swain, leaning out the pilot house window. With a general shout, the square rigger threw off the tow lines, and the two ships parted. There was a final exchange of good wishes, and then the Lady Wilma kicked up her paddle wheels, relieved of her burden, and sprinted forward. She was back in the race. Why did the captain help the square rigger? Yeah, because they needed help. Was there anything in it for him? No, he's just being a cool guy. Who knows, sometimes when you do somebody a favor, it comes back to you in other ways. Maybe that'll happen. That was nice of the captain. Hey, that's the end of chapter 3. That was a good one. Kind of quick. All right, well, let's do this again tomorrow, maybe the next day, okay? Have a great day. Adios, my friends.